And good evening, and welcome to a very special occasion. I'm Sabrina Lamb, the founder and executive director of the World of Money, a 17-year leading provider of youth financial and entrepreneurial education. But that's not all we do. We sing the praises of amazing partners in the nonprofit space, creating amazing and very powerful opportunities in education for our young people. Tonight, our very, very special guests are James E. Bravo, Director of Admissions of Teak, stand by for that, and John Carlos Penales, who is an admissions counselor also at Teak. Just a quick verb, but they're going to really get into it. Teak is a free program that helps talented students from low-income families achieve their potential. Through intensive after-school and summer programs, Teak prepares middle school students to get into the nation's most selective high schools and colleges. And I'm so honored that many World of Money moguls are also Teak graduates. Welcome, James, and welcome, John Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you for having us today. We're excited to talk a little bit more and show you all a little bit more about Teak Fellowship.
Yes. So before we do, I'm always interested in your stories because being service-minded, community-minded, student, young people-minded, I'm interested in your brief journeys. Let's start with James.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Sabrina. So for me, I actually wasn't exposed. I didn't know of programs like Teak Fellowship or even programs like World of Money. I'm public born and public institution student all my life, in New York City, and very proud of that. And I think that's been, my journey and experience and what I'm bringing to Teak, now learning myself. I feel like sometimes I'm applying at the Teak Fellowship because I'm just learning so much every year of what we do and, the opportunities that can be a reality for a lot of our families in the private school sector. If that's something that really, would be beneficial for them and really fit their type of learning style as well. So, it's been great to learn. As I said before, I love the public school system. I think we do a lot of great and wonderful things, but it's been great to also learn myself, but at the same time, expose families to also the private sector and what benefits come with that as well.
Excellent. Jan Carlos, let's hear your story.
Yeah, so I'm actually fortunate enough to be a part of Teak's 13th class. So I actually have been through the program, and it's something that it's one of my greatest accomplishments because of Teak's exposure. I've been able to attend a boarding school and then attend Wesleyan University in Connecticut. And then when I actually found out about this admissions counselor position at Teak, it felt like a really full circle moment. And I knew that that was my next step.
What was your major at Wesleyan?
I was a political science major.
Excellent, excellent. Always need more politicians. All right. So James, Jan Carlos, take it away.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen real quick.
Awesome. Well, thank you, John Carlos, for taking the lead on presenting our presentation for you all today. And thank you for everybody who's watching this right now or who potentially will watch this later on. We definitely hope you learn a lot about Teak Fellowship, what we do for students around New York City, and basically what we do for the next 10 years if a student is accepted into our program. So on the next slide, and as Sabrina mentioned, I am James. I'm currently the Director of Admissions at Teak Fellowship. And John Carlos, who will reintroduce himself a little later on during his section, but he's also the admissions counselor here at Teak Fellowship. And basically our goal is this, right? To expose families and students to programs like Teak. As I mentioned before, I myself didn't even know about a potential opportunity like Teak, and maybe my parents didn't get the opportunity to learn about programs like Teak. So I'm happy to be here with you all and basically share our mission, which we believe that a student's motivation and potential, not economic circumstances, should really determine a student's future, right? And we unlock that access through outstanding education and transformative experience for our New York City students, okay? Through our 10 years in Teak Fellowship, and also through the different opportunities that are going to come about throughout those years, such as internships, such as job placements, such as high school and college placements, so on and so forth, which I will continue to show you in the next slides. And before we even move on, just as I know World of Money has their own versions of core values, Teak has our values as well, right? And we call it the 4 ships, all right? So we believe in scholarship, leadership, citizenship, and fellowship. And all of our fellows learn about these 4 ships throughout their years in Teak. Some of our impact, right? Families, even students. I know many of you may be numbers oriented, data oriented. So just wanted to share some quick data points before I dive a little deeper into how we do programming at Teak. 100% of our students this past year have matriculated to top selective colleges. 91% of college tuition costs was covered for the class of 2021 through financial aid awards. And I love this statistic because it just really shows you how much time and dedication our Teak deans really spent with the families and students and filling out those applications, filling out those financial aid applications, which if some of you have been through that experience, it could be a headache of it in itself, but we were really there to help you all, to help those families out with that process. 71% of our students are identifying as the first in their family to attend college. And average SAT score this past year, 1390. Not too bad, of course, compared to the national average. We're definitely scoring a little bit over 100 points more. And I like to detail this as well because, of course, as always, scores could be higher. They could be close to perfect, if not perfect. But what I really like to, say within that message is, again, the same thing in terms of how much time we dedicated for SAT prep, for application support prep and all those different things that come when we're speaking about, college placement. So how do we do what we do, right? As I mentioned before, and thank you again, Sabrina, for mentioning this. We are a nonprofit academic enrichment program for current 6th grade students, okay? So I will say this, we only do admissions year during the 6th grade year of a student in middle school, okay? And throughout that, once they're accepted, then they become part of the 10-year, journey, okay? And throughout that time, we really focus on what we call the Teak way, right? Providing highly individualized student support. So we really want to stay true to having small class sizes, nothing more than 16 students. Dean advisement program, right? So all of our students get paired up with a dean, basically like a school counselor, right? I know some schools even call their counselors dean. So but that's what we do here at Teak as well. And we offer an extensive mentorship program. For the first 2 years a student joins into our program, they get a mentor, right? I didn't have a mentor during middle school. I actually didn't learn about mentorship till later on in high school. So it's great to know that our fellows are receiving some type of mentorship as early as, middle school. And and below that, just to give you an example of some of the different curriculums that we practice throughout our time. So, STEM related courses, multicultural history, leadership, public speaking, all great and wonderful stuff. As an addition to, of course, the regular core math or writing type of classes. So to break it down even a little further, what does programming look like? I'm interested, James. What will my son or what will my daughter need to do once they're in the program, and what does that look like? So right now, the way it is we offer our classes during the summers, and this is mandatory during the summers, and as well as during the school year, twice a week throughout the school year. Okay, I'll break down Summer Institute in a little bit, but just to give you a brief overview, it's definitely the first 3 summers. Once the student is accepted, so summer before 7th, summer before 8th grade, and summer before 9th grade. And those are usually 6 weeks. I'll get into that a little bit more in a few. And then the after school programming, that actually happens during the 7th grade year and 8th grade year, twice a week. And depending where you're located, where you currently reside, we will place you in one of our offsites to take those after school classes. So for example, I'm sure I have families here who are coming from the Bronx. So for those who are in the Bronx, your offsite would be at Fordham Prep, which is literally in the same campus as Fordham University, right across the street from Party City, if you know Fordham. For those in Queens, it's actually in the Kew Gardens section of Queens. The school is called Kew Forest. So literally a block or 2 blocks away from Queens Boulevard, all those major buses pass by there. So it's easily accessible. And last but not least, Brooklyn. For those who are in downtown Manhattan or in Brooklyn, you would be in downtown Brooklyn at a school called St. Anne's doing your after school programming. And of course, I know you see the little house representing Manhattan, but we don't host classes in Manhattan. This little house is just to represent that our Teak Fellowship office, our central office, is in Manhattan on 22nd Street between 5th and 6th Avenue. And we do host some events here, but we do not host our classes here as of right now. Summer Institute. So for those who just want to find out a little bit more what's going on during those 6 weeks. So 6 weeks, as I mentioned, usually starting from July all the way into the first, max 2nd week of August, a little bit after July 4th, of course. These next 2 bullet points is just to give you an example of what we did this past summer. So Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 2 p.m., those were really our academic focus days, academic related classes days. And then Fridays, we saved that for trips and community building for our fellows. Think about it, we were just coming back from a pandemic. Some students, were coming back from at least doing hybrid model, but some students were still fully in person. So by the time they came to Teak this past summer, it was their first time really being back in some type of classroom space. So we really wanted to provide the opportunity for students to go beyond the classroom space and build that community. And we did that through trips. And of course, our Summer Institute programming does happen in Manhattan, but it happens at one of the private schools in Manhattan called the Browning School, which is around 62nd Street and Park Avenue. So that's another thing for you all to consider, that yes, during the summers, you do have to travel to Manhattan for now, as that's been the location to do our classes of for Teak and Summer Institute. And on the right-hand side, I won't read all the classes that we have offered, but I will pick on some, usually the most popular ones. I know students these days love coding. So many schools have been providing more opportunities to learn coding, but not all. So we love to continue providing coding in our program. Public speaking. It took forever for me to get to this point where I feel comfortable presenting. And if it wasn't for my own training in public speaking and experiences, I probably wouldn't be here smiling and presenting to you all. I probably would look really nervous. So this is the same type of practice we want, to expose to our students, right? To really start getting comfortable, even at a younger age, middle school age, to feel comfortable as who they are, and to be in front of a classroom or to speak to their classmates in a group setting, and really stand for who they are and what they want to speak about. And we do that in a fun way, actually, through a Shakespeare class. So, that's our little twist to it. But I think it's amazing. And of course, as I was talking, I hope you were reading all the other classes that we offer in general, just so you could get a sense of what they learned throughout the summers. As many programs, as many schools, we all had to transition to some level of how we were going to respond to COVID-19 and the pandemic. So if anyone is curious, here we go. We also went fully remote up to a certain point. So we were offering all our classes in Summer Institute remotely. Eventually, we moved to a hybrid model and then back to a fully in-person model. During that time, we was hearing it all. So we were trying to provide our families with consistent Wi-Fi. So providing those hotspots in case their current internet provider was going down. We always provide computers for our fellows, blue light glasses, headphones, noise cancellation headphones. And then on the right-hand side, I really do want to speak on, the extra support services that we offer to our fellows. One of them being mental health. I know it used to be the elephant in the room, and nobody at one point wanted to talk about mental health. But we really, one thing I would say is that the pandemic really did, have us all wake up and realize that mental health, can be a challenge for a lot of our students. And it starts really early, right? Like there's really no cutoff. So we wanted to provide that opportunity for our students to feel comfortable and know that Teak will help them with finding some type of mental health support, whether it's through our partners like Teen Talk or Talkspace, or even just in general. As I mentioned before, we have our deaning advisement system. So our deans were checking in with our students more consistently, as well as parents throughout that time. And we also offered our own versions of, let's unwind, let's have fun a little bit, and not really focus too much on the other things that of course we were having to complete. So we did yoga, we did filmmaking classes, community building activities through Zoom, and many other things throughout that time. Also, as we continue to think about the pandemic, and of course, we're now even seeing how Omicron is really taking into effect for a lot of us here in New York City. Teak does have our own health and safety protocol. Now, again, this is Teak related. I do not want families and students to get confused that potentially this is also a world of money safety protocol and health protocol, or your own school's safety, health, and protocol. This is only related to Teak, okay? And here we go. This is where I'll break it down. So as the CDC recommends, and a lot of our host schools are also moving towards this model, All eligible students 5 years and older must be fully vaccinated against COVID-19 by April of this year. Again, this is Teak's policy. Providing a proof of negative COVID test at the beginning of each week if they're not eligible or they are ineligible for vaccination. And we will provide those rapid kits. So you don't have to feel like, oh my God, every week I have to go to my nearby clinic. You know, that I could understand that takes up a lot of time. So we provide those kits. And also completing our online symptoms screening form every day, the days that we are hosting our classes at Teak or at our offsites, okay? Now, of course, there are a few exceptions that we will consider with official documentation explaining as to those reasonings. But yes, there can be some medical reasons, pre-medical conditions that actually affect you, and it would make more sense not to get vaccinated because there's just not enough research yet, for example. You know, and we've heard that already, and we've got, you know, again, we request official documentations to prove that. And another one that usually comes up are like religious and cultural beliefs, reasoning as to why students cannot get vaccinated. And again, yes, we will listen to those. We will accept official documentation explaining to those reasons. And if approved, you can still be a Teak fellow. You would just have to submit, you know, negative COVID tests more often throughout your time in Teak, at least for the near future. Okay, I'm happy to have more conversations about this later on. Later on, we will share our contact information. So if this is a concern for you and you just want to talk it out a little bit more, maybe you have a few more questions, happy to do so. And like I said, I'll share that information later on before we end today. Transformational experiences. We have a great, of course, Teak is really, you know, heavy on academics, but, you know, we can't just focus on academic progress, right? We're a 10-year fellowship, and the students are getting older and they're becoming more curious and they want to eventually work and do what they love, do what they are interested in. So we do that little by little, starting with the mentorship programming, having somebody else to talk to and explain, you know, how did they do what they're doing now? You know, what was their journey? Community service events, really important, really teaching our fellows the importance of giving back. Trips to Broadway shows, Shakespeare in the Park. I know many of our fellows, and I'm sure many World of Money students as well. I mean, if it wasn't for our programs, you know, many of you probably wouldn't have even stepped out of your boroughs, right? So I remember a few of our fellows explaining, oh my God, this is the first time I'm coming into Manhattan, you know, and you know, it's just amazing to see, you know, their level of curiosity and just like, wow, we're really in Manhattan, right? And we understand sometimes we have everything in our own home boroughs, but we really want to expose our fellows to different opportunities around New York City. And why not through those free trips? And of course, exposing them to other more, you know, job-related type of trips. So for example, visiting a Google office and so on and so forth throughout New York City, to also just see what it is to eventually be a part of the working, you know, life in New York City. Part of what we do, and Sabrina mentioned this earlier as well in the introduction, but one of the main things that we also do throughout our time in Teak is placement. First, it starts off with high school placement, and then later on, we would do college and university placement with you all right? But the first step is high school, right? So during your 8th grade year, we will help you and introduce you to opportunities with the independent day school and boarding school options, not only around New York and New York State, but around the country, all right? We will also help and introduce you through different screened high school opportunities. And by screened, that's a bigger umbrella for including specialized schools, top selected public high schools like Hunter High School, Beacon, so on and so forth, and parochial schools. All right. I do want to emphasize though, what makes Teak different is that we will mostly focus on introducing you all to the application process. All right. We will not spend too much time on the public high school application process. Why is that? Well, the student's current middle school will be doing that regardless. All right. So their school counselor will be in contact with you to handle those applications, the public high school application processes, as well as most schools do their own version of the SAT prep classes at their own location. We do offer some of that as well, but our main focus again is going to be the private high school application process. And during that time, again, we'll help you with the applications. We'll help you all with the financial aid application for these schools, test prep for both of these, levels of tests. So the SSAT, which is more for the private schools, and the SHSAT, which is for the specialized high schools in New York City. Interview practice, private and in-person public virtual high school open houses, and a 2-night boarding school retreat. All right. Many of us don't even know what a boarding school is. And parents, I know as soon as I'm mentioning boarding school, you're like, no, you cannot take my baby away for high school. They're too young. I can't see it. And trust me, I completely understand. I do want to, make sure that you all know that we won't force a boarding school option on a student and family. That's not our job. If it's not a fit for you all now, it won't be a fit at all, right? If anything, they will not succeed in those schools. So that's why we don't force anything. But we at least want you to be open-minded and at least explore the idea in the beginning. And one of the ways we do that is with the 2-night boarding school retreat trip. So students stay, usually we've done it at one of the nearby schools in a sense called the Master School in Dobbs Ferry, New York, which is only a few stops away on the Metro North. And the students would sleep at that school overnight for two nights. Yes, it's chaperoned, so parents, don't worry. Teak staff is there and all of that. And then on the final day, parents, you are invited as well to explore, get a campus tour, speak to current teachers at that school, and kind of just learn, and students, and learn what a boarding school option could potentially be for your student. So that's something exciting that we do during the 8th grade high school placement process. Here, just to give you some ideas of where our students are currently in and where they've been going these past few years. Again, this is going to include a list, a wide range of lists from current day schools here in New York City to overall boarding schools around the United States. Left-hand side, private day schools. All of these are in New York City. We have Berkeley Carroll right there in Brooklyn. We have, of course, Packer Collegiate also in Brooklyn. Trinity right here in Manhattan. And let's pick a few of the boarding schools. I always like to mention the Kate School, which, yes, we do have some students who have gone all the way to California to go for high school. But of course, we could stay local in the tri-state. So we have Choate, Connecticut, Hotchkiss, Connecticut, the Petty School in New Jersey. So again, a lot of our students are finding these opportunities, but still pretty close to home, which I think once the families learn a little bit more about this process and opportunities, they're open to that. I'll talk a little bit about high school and college, and then pretty soon I'll pass the baton to John Carlos, who will finish off the presentation for today. But really quick, what does Teak look like once the student is in high school? What are the remaining years looking like for our fellows? Well, we will continue. There's still a dean advisement system for our fellows. They'll still be paired up with a dean, and the dean will continue to do visits, schedule Zoom calls, do in-person visits. So we at least visit the student at their schools once per semester. which is really important. We would now create and invite our fellows back for what we call fellow forums. So they're basically workshops for our fellows during their school breaks, where they could actually come back as a community and, catch up with each other, learn from each other, learn what they're, tell each other what they're learning at their own respective schools. But we also take the opportunity to teach them something new from one of us as deans in the space. Paid internships. Again, this is now high school year, so they are a little older. They do have a little bit more access now to start working and get some type of level of experience. Eventually, college guidance and test prep, as I mentioned earlier, and the application process with that for college. Professional coaching programs, and for families, parents, guardians, we have something special for you all too. I always like to say that this program is just as much as for the parents than it is for the kids. All right. And this is why we created the Teak Family Association. So you all also have a community to bond with each other, to really, ask for each other's advice and see, hey, how did you handle this situation? I know your son also goes to boarding school. How are you doing this? What do you tell your child, right? And we see that constantly happening throughout that programming of the Family Association. So that's something extra that we add into our program. Here's just to give you an idea, a brief idea. I know college can sometimes be a far vision from now. But this is just to give you a brief idea of where our students are going. As you see here, some of our fellows representing their college and university t-shirts proudly. But we have Columbia University, of course, that's here close to home for all many of us. As John Carlos mentioned before, Wesleyan University, right? Princeton, so on and so forth. And that's just to name a few. But again, this is just to give you an idea of where our students are applying and matriculating for college and universities. And last but not least, before JC finishes off the presentation today, we wanted to give you a quick example of somebody who's a current fellow in our program. So here's Avery. And yes, it's intentional that we want to talk about and expose you all to Avery because she's actually the student, the brave student who chose to go all the way to California to attend a Kate school during her high school years. Yes. Now, trust me, of course, that was a in-depth conversation. That was a long conversation with her and the family to make sure that they were sure about that opportunity. But long and behold, it was, and she did her 4 years there in California. And ultimately on the last year, she became student body president at the Kate school. So she really took her time and took advantage of the opportunities that were there. Another thing I usually like to mention as you are reading the different scenarios that she's talking about, when we talk about community service, when we talk about giving back, I mean, I think Avery was like, I don't know what was her thinking process, but she definitely was like, you know what, I want to take it above and beyond, and I want to give back to an international, I want to give back in an international level. And as you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, she went all the way to Morocco on an international service trip to help build homes in Morocco. Now, I just don't even know how to explain this, but all I know is that I definitely look up to her. I don't care that she's a current college student. I could definitely look up to her because she's definitely providing a path and just, again, another example as to what you can be doing, what the students can be doing as they're, growing up and going more into their years in high school and college, as they're getting more into adulthood. And last but not least, she came back home. So parents, yes, they do come back home. Don't worry. She came back to New York City. And as you'll see in the top, she's a current second-year student at Columbia University. So thank you everyone for your time. I'll definitely now pass it off to John Carlos. He will finish off the presentation. And also, if you're interested, he would explain how you could qualify for the program and how to apply. And feel free to ask us any questions towards the end of the presentation. John Carlos, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our commitment to access and affordability. So Teak covers all costs associated with programming, including the student's Chromebook, transportation, and academic supplies. And as someone who's been through the program, I've been a part of the 13th class of the Teak Fellowship. I can definitely attest that this is very true. The running joke that all Teak fellows have is that Teak will never ask you for a dime, but they very much will ask you for your time. We are a 10-year program that's very blessed to just have so many resources at our disposal, but we definitely want you guys to take advantage of that. So the one thing we definitely ask our fellows is to just always show up and be present. Furthermore, Teak works closely with families to help them make the best school-informed choices and attain the best financial aid awards possible. So like James said earlier, we are not a school. We don't give out the financial aid awards ourselves, but we work with our school partners to get you the best financial aid awards possible. As someone who's been through the fellowship, I can very much say that I have very little costs associated with my schooling. So hopefully something that James and I have said so far has sparked your interest in the Teak Fellowship, and you're wondering, okay, what are some of the requirements in order to join? So you have to currently be a current 6th grade student at a New York City middle school, have 90% or above in all classes. And I just want to put a little asterisk here with the 90%, that is a very loose requirement. We understand because of COVID and just everything going on with like present circumstances, that this thing, we have all been through things. So if you don't have all 90s in your report card, let's say you have 85s and above, please, please, please still apply to the Teak Fellowship. We take a very much a holistic approach in accepting students. So if your grades aren't all the way there right now, we are very understanding of that. You have to come from a family with financial need. The Teak Fellowship's mission statement is to serve and represent low-income families. So you do have to come from a family with financial need. And then the student has to be a US citizen or a legal permanent resident. We only ask about citizenship from the student and not from the overall family. So only the student would need to provide their citizenship status. And then of course, have a strong attendance record. We just wanna make sure that you're showing up for school. And then, like I said, with the grades requirement, if for whatever reason, because of COVID, or there is a reason that you have some absences, as long as you can explain it, then we will very much work with you. So I talked about how Teak is definitely here to serve and represent low-income families. So in this slide, I'm gonna explain how we basically determine your financial eligibility. So once again, Teak uses a holistic approach to determine eligibility by considering a variety of factors. So we look at your household income, your real estate assets, or just any other financial factors that can impact your financial circumstances. And just to distill it even further, if you look at the graph on the right, let's say you are coming from a household size of 2, let's say a parent slash guardian and a child, you have to be making less than $96,000 in order to be eligible for the Teak Fellowship. Let's say that you are coming from a family of 4, 2 parents slash guardians, and let's say 2 children, then you have to be making less than $119,000 in order to be a part of the Teak Fellowship. So once again, I just want to make clear that you have to be making less than these metrics. You don't have to be making this amount in order to qualify. So hopefully something I've said has continued your interest and you're wondering, okay, I'm definitely into this. How do I apply? So at the end of this presentation, there is going to be a QR code that you can scan using the camera app on your phone. And it will basically take you to a 2-question questionnaire, basically asking, are you interested? So we can follow up and send you more information. You have to submit your 5th grade and Q1 6th grade report cards in order for us to determine your academic eligibility. Once again, if you have Bs and higher, please still submit to the Teak Fellowship. Also 3s and above also work. And we understand that either people's 5th grade schools may have shut down because of COVID, or it may be difficult to get the current 5th grade report card. If you have the 6th grade report card, please still send that to us, because then you will be able to have access to our application. And then, like I just mentioned right now, you have to complete the online application via ravenahub.com. And I'll explain a little bit, I'll explain that a little bit later on. So what is the application made up of? What is in the application for the Teak Fellowship? So we have a student statement, which is basically made up of 3 short answers that you can answer in 1 paragraph. And then we have a longer essay question asking about your impact and what you've done or what you would like to change about your community. And this essay question is usually around 3 paragraphs. Students, do not worry. We are just trying to see your writing style. We're not judging whether this is really good versus really bad. We just want to see, okay, this is what this student does well in writing, and then this is where we may need a little bit more improvement. Then we have the parent statement. I argue that this is the easiest question of the application because it is 1 question, and it is basically asking, why do you want to join the Teak Fellowship? Why do you want to be a part of our family? And parents, do not worry if English is not your first language or if you're worried about your grammar. We're not judging any of that. We're just looking for your sentiment to see, why do you want to join the Teak Fellowship? Then we also do require 2 teacher recommendations. And this is forms that will be delegated to whatever teachers you choose to recommend for your child. 1 does have to come from the current 6th grade ELA or math teacher. And then the second recommendation can be another teacher you have now in the 6th grade, someone you've had in the past in the 5th grade, or it can be someone who knows you really well. We have students who apply who are part of different sports teams. We have students who are very active in their religious communities. So we receive recommendations from sports coaches, people in your religious community. The only person that the second recommendation cannot come from is from a family member, because we do understand that that may be a little biased. And then we also, like I mentioned earlier, in order to determine your financial eligibility, we do look at your financial information. And for this, we refer to the 2020 tax returns. So some of the application requirements, everything I listed and talked about in the previous slide, that is a part of the round 1 application. And that is actually due in a couple of weeks, due Tuesday, January 25th at 5:00 p.m. I would definitely encourage all of you to get started sooner rather than later, because this is a strict deadline. And sadly, there are always parents that come 5:00 and say, oh my gosh, like I'm almost done. Can I please have 5 more minutes? In order to keep it fair, this is a very, very strict deadline. So please get started on it earlier if you are interested. And then if your child moves on to the second round and becomes a finalist for Teak, this is when you will take an admissions test. And the admissions test, like the application, is just a diagnostic. We want to see, once again, what do you do well and what needs more improvement. We understand that every student is different and comes with different needs. So it helps us build out your individual action and education plan for the Teak Fellowship. Then at this point, which is one of my favorite parts of the application process, is when we start to have student and family interviews. With student and family interviews, this finally puts a face to the name that we've been reading about for the past couple of months. And it gives us a chance to really connect and get to know each other better. Once again, if you are coming from a family where English is not your first language, or you're not as comfortable with English, we will provide a translator from our end. All you have to do is let us know in advance and what language you prefer, and then we will provide a translator. And then at the round 2 application, this is when we actually start to look at your official financial documents, such as your federal tax returns and your W-2s. And this part of the round 2 application is due March 21st, 2022 at 5 p.m. So we've reached the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for talking with me, for being interactive. Thank you. If you have any questions, like James mentioned earlier, you can definitely call us at 212-288-6678, extension 190. And for those who are interested and would like to email us the 5th and 6th grade report card, this is the email that you can email it to at admissions with an S at teakfellowship.org. Once again, thank you so much.
JC, thank you so much. Thank you, James, for an excellent, excellent presentation. Parents, young people, 6th graders, let's go. Let's go, Teak. Thank you so much, JC.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.